Starting. Boom. Okay, so there we are. So this is the Business, Life, and Brotherhood podcast that is actually on video. And today we've got Nicole Wolfer on with us. She's down in Portland. You're in Portland, right?
Mm-hmm. Newberg, technically, but still Portland area.
Okay, we'll call it Portland. And so we're just going to jump right into it. And so, Nicole, if you want to give the folks listening and watching at home a quick 45 seconds, best you can, concise your whole life into 45 seconds so they can get to know you better. My
personal elevator pitch. So I'm Nicole Wolfer, and I graduated from Portland State University back in 2011. Since then, I have worked for all sorts of various nonprofits in the Portland area. I worked for the Portland Rose Festival. I worked for the Home Builders Association and then the Home Builders Foundation. And I recently made the jump to Meals on Wheels people about a month and a half ago. So that's my work history in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So I'm super pumped to talk to you about the nonprofit and event-based marketing and planning. That's that's something that a lot of folks in my life have done, and I strive to do. So I can't wait to pick your brain on that.
Thanks.
And so the other thing, just quickly, a little bit about Chapter, any leadership roles or anything that you did or events that you put on while you were in school.
Yeah, so I joined the Portland State Colony before it was a chapter. So kind of like a baby chapter. We started out with, I think like 4 or 5 of us. I was immediately voted to be the secretary, which was awesome. I was in that role for about a year, and the then president of the colony at that time, we kind of lost track of him, not really sure where he went. And over the summer between my freshman year and sophomore year, I was voted in as president of the colony. So kind of thrown into this leadership role and had to figure out a lot of crazy things. We were basically starting from scratch as a colony. We didn't have any
What year was that?
To go off of. That was, so they tried to restart the chapter starting in fall of 2007. And then I was president fall 2008 until we became a chapter in spring of 2011. So it was a little bit of a long process. So yeah, I was a long tenured president of that colony. And then I was president of the chapter for like 2 weeks, and then I graduated and they kicked me out. So good times.
That's awesome. That's awesome, though. So I remember you as being president. I didn't know that you served also as a secretary, and that you used the word awesome to describe that is great. That's good. I don't know that others would describe that position with those same words. Did you guys, as a colony, did you guys do anything rad? I mean, were you able to pull anything off that you just never thought was possible?
Yeah, totally. I think one of the biggest things was we had someone in the chapter that was like, I really want to do a concert. And we're like, cool, we have no idea what we're doing. And so we, as a chapter, decided we wanted to do a signature event. We called it Viking Fest. The first year we had like 3 bands that came, and we had like Monster Energy drinks, and it was in the Smith Ballroom, and it was a great time. Super tiny. I think like maybe 30 people showed up. But it was so cool to, as a chapter, get to do something like that and plan something like that and have these big, crazy ideas and be able to just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I remember hearing about that, and my members in chapter wanted to do something similar, and the idea was so big. But no boots on the ground was really willing to put in the work. How many folks did you have in chapter at that time, and who really did you just have one person spearhead it?
We had one person that was really the driving force behind that event, and I think we ended up kind of splitting the chapter, if I remember right. So kind of we had like the basic day-to-day operations people, and then the other half of the chapter was solely focused on Viking Fest. But I mean, when we were talking about splitting the chapter, I think we were maybe 12, 14, maybe 20 people. So we were small but mighty.
So, yeah, 100%. That's awesome. I think, you know, when looking back and maybe this is your experience moving forward, we'll dig into that, but having those passionate groups, like we did one event, you know, we had SOTC that was really the shining star of our tenure. And we had one person who was the driving force behind making that happen. And she's a complete rock star. She's another person that I lean on for advice on events and stuff, because she still does it now. She does coordinated events and fundraising and stuff, which is fantastic. So with your experience, I mean, we could, you know, reminisce, but jumping forward, like how did you've done a handful of things now, and you're just newly with Meals on Wheels, and you've done kind of event-based marketing. It looks like we have a strong history of that. Was that always something? Did you get a degree in that? I mean, how did you leave college and get into this kind of charity work and event-based marketing work?
You know, I kind of fell into events, which seems to happen to a lot of people in my career field. I was interning with the School of Business under a professor, wanted to do a project about study abroad, and they decided to turn that internship into a full-time position. And so I was out. And she said, I have this other colleague that needs an intern really bad. She's planning a conference and she just needs someone to help out with the logistics and the planning. I think it'd be perfect for you. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess if this sounds like a good idea. I mean, I was hoping that I would have this internship for another 6 months. You guys are telling me that I'm done. So yeah, sure, totally. So I ended up interning for let me see if I even remember what the name was. It was the Center for Global Leadership and Sustainability. And it was their annual conference. And I knew nothing about sustainability, nothing about conference planning. And I was just kind of thrown in there and I loved it. It was so much fun to work on a project and then just see it come to fruition in like 2 days and have everything run exactly the way that you planned it. So that was a short-lived internship. And then after that, I started kind of looking for those event-based internships. And I was lucky enough to get picked up by the Portland Rose Festival, which is definitely one of the biggest events in the Portland area. They do the Grand Floral Parade. They have a big carnival downtown. They have 3 other parades that have totally different audiences. And they have their events down. And so it was really learning from some of the best in the industry on how to run events and also how to market events and how to sell sponsorships and how to recruit volunteers. Awesome. It was 6 months of pure craziness. But it was the experience that I think really led to all of the other positions that I've gotten.
Yeah, 100%. So with that, you said that they had their events down pat, that they were super dialed in. Was any of your experience, was it with the Center for Global Leadership and Sustainability? Was that something that you primarily had to make up and get done, or did they have some guidelines to follow, or somebody that kind of led the direction, or was that something that really you became the arbiter of that, the success of that event?
I would say, so the conference, it was like their, I want to say 2nd or 3rd year. So they had some experience, but they were moving to a completely new venue. And so even changes like that in an event, you kind of have to relearn how to do things. And so there was a couple of things that they were like, well, we did this last year, but the way the event space is, it's not going to work this year. So can you figure out how registration is going to work, how that's going to look, how the event flow is? And so there was definitely different pieces. And then as far as the Rose Festival goes, they pretty much have their stuff dialed in, but every year seems to bring new challenges. So the year that I was there, Portlandia had just come out, and it was like this huge big deal. And so they were trying to weave Portlandia throughout all of these events. So, I mean, like my market research was watching episodes of Portlandia and being like, okay, how can we like make this into the parade and like bring this into the carnival. And so it's just interesting because every event, even if it's the same one that you do every year, there's always a new challenge or something different that you want to bring to it.
Yeah. That's awesome though. That's so funny. Yeah. That was just like, yeah, that was a huge thing. Yeah. Very funny. So and I have a lot of selfish questions for you, and I want to add as much value to everybody else as well too. And so one of the questions that I always ask folks is, you know, you had an internship that kind of spun you off in another direction. You've obviously had a bunch of experience with different firms and different places, home builders, you know, all these different things that you've done. How have you gone about finding these different roles? I want to touch on that, and then I'm gonna jump back into some other stuff. But how have you? Has it always been kind of getting spun off, or did you actively seek? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because my transition from the Roast Festival to the Home Builders Association was probably one of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me. I was working there, and they have a group of interns every year. It's a seasonal employment, and the internship is ending. And one of the interns interviewed for a job at the Home Builders Association. And she got the job, she signed the offer letter, and then the Roast Festival said, "We actually want to keep you. Would you become one of our full-time employees?" She was like, "Oh yeah, like that's actually really what I want. I don't really want to work for this association." So they sent me to go interview. They were like, "Well, you wanted one of our interns, but let's offer you a different one." So they literally sent me to interview. I had no idea what the company was. I knew the job had to do with events, but I wasn't entirely sure what it was about.
Interesting.
So I was frantically like searching on my phone, like, what do these people do? I have no idea what I'm doing. And I interviewed with them, and that night I got a phone call from one of them saying, "Hey, we want to hire you. When can you start?" So it was a total weird random coincidence, but it's all about, I think, who you know and how well you network with your internships. So I was at the Home Builders Association for about 2 years, and they have an in-house nonprofit called Home Builders Foundation. And they had a new executive director come in, and the Home Builders Foundation is a traditional nonprofit. So they're a 501c3, and their mission is to build and renovate homeless shelters. So it's a very interesting mission.
Well, that's right.
So they had a new CEO come on, and he wanted to hire a fundraiser. And I applied for the job and ended up staying with them for 5 years. I'm super happy. I loved my job. We did awesome, crazy, absolutely insane events, awesome fundraising. It was a great cause. And then this summer, I was contacted by a recruiter that said, "Hey, we have this position at Meals on Wheels open. Would you be interested in it?" And it was one of those moments where you're like, well, I mean, maybe I could use a change. And again, like I went in and I knew about their organization. I vaguely knew about their events. And when I interviewed with them, they had such an incredible team dynamic. And I was like, I want to be a part of this. So that's kind of how I weaved my way through Portland.
That's amazing, though. My mom was heavy into philanthropy. She's the executive director of a food bank and a senior center. Before that, she ran a safe house and was an executive director of the safe house, and worked in that regard as an advocate for domestic violence victims. And then she had done and so you become a part of these communities. You're actually part, woven into the fabric, and they all know each other. They all work with each other. They sponsor events with each other. And it's something that I think, because with that background with my mom, when I was in chapter, I was like, man, she used to do golf tournaments and croquet tournaments with a beer garden and like all the like she's just these monster events. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's what service is.
Yeah.
Service is a beer garden and croquet.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we doing, isn't this? And in my brain, I'm thinking, well, it's, AK size, such a safe place to screw up. We should shoot for the stars. But I think that everybody would benefit from understanding how networking is such a dirty word. People don't like it, but how those groups communicate to each other, how they organize events, why those stakeholders align themselves and commit and grow. When you were in school, did you know that this was the direction, and what'd you get a degree in? I mean, it's such a, you're so specialized now.
Yeah.
Was that the intent?
It was never the intent. So my degree is in business and specifically in marketing. And I had taken a couple of classes about nonprofits and a couple on PR. And I was kind of debating about like, where do I really want to go? But once I had a couple event internships, I realized I really want to work in events. Yeah. And I think the easiest thing was to look for nonprofits, because most nonprofits have events as part of their fundraising initiatives. So it's really easy to find nonprofits to work for. And there's definitely a lot of for-profit companies now that I recognize that do events, but I think those feel completely different. And I don't know if I would be happy moving over to kind of the, corporate evil side of event planning. But it was never really the intention. It was more of a...
What did you think you were going to do?
Honestly, I don't know. It's so funny because when I started college, I was like, I really want to get a degree in marketing, but I don't really know if I had an idea like exactly what I wanted to do with that. It just sounded really cool. Yeah. And then just like throughout the classes and especially my internships, I kind of realized like what I liked and what I didn't like. So, the kind of the market research and stuff like that, I was like, nope, not for me. I'm more of a hands-on person. And
see, and that's the only answer I can get. That's the only answer I can get from friends who are they got a degree in marketing, right? And I'm like, okay, so what do you do? Oh, well, we look at analytics and market research and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, it seems like, a waste of time. Just release the product and see if people want to buy it. Like why don't you just do that? Like, and I think of myself as a marketer because of the work that I do. And I get, direct response marketing and, some branding, but not really. Most of the stuff I do is kind of a direct response thing, which I get. That makes sense. Yeah. Analytics, I don't know.
Boring.
Yeah. Well, that's killer. That's has there been, has there been any real passion projects or any events that you have been a part of that you just thought were amazing? Like it sounds like you're doing a lot, getting ready to ramp up with Meals on Wheels. Are there things that you guys are doing that that you're just really proud to be a part of, or glad you're got your hands on it? Does that make sense? I mean, like, I just feel like events are such a thing that it's like, boom, we worked really hard. Here's this event. Yeah. Start from scratch. Here's this heart, Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the events that I'm most proud of planning and executing is with the Home Build Foundation. They had this thing called the Trap Shoot. And the way I like to explain it to people is it's like a golf tournament, but it's with trap shooting. So, like you throw the clay pigeons, you shoot at them, and you're on a team of 5, you get scored. It's a big deal. Like these people are dead serious about it. And when I started, they had the trap shoot and they had like 30 teams of 5. And it was kind of this like mellow half day thing. And it raised, I want to say like, I don't know, maybe $40,000. So, I mean, it was a good event. Yeah. And then just, I don't know what happened, if it was just the right people at the right moment. We had this awesome committee. We had a committee chair that was really dedicated, and it just took off. So they just had it on Friday.
Oh, wow.
And I would like to take a little bit of credit for this because I was involved in the planning process up until like July. But they just hit $100,000 on the track shoot in, I think, 3 years. And they're up to 70 teams. So they've more than doubled in size. I mean, it's just like crazy. And when you see, I think everyone kind of jump on board and get involved.
This is their 3rd year doing it?
Overall, it's their 13th.
Wow.
It's been 3 since I was involved with it.
Got it. Okay.
So, I mean, it just kind of exploded. And I think like when you see an event come together and start here and then just skyrocket, you're like, yes, this is what people want. This is what people like. This is a fundraising event that works for us. Yep. We found our sweet spot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then people, word of mouth, oh, you didn't make it, you should totally go next year. It's the best. And then you have to perform next year. You have to be able to do it again. And that's fantastic. Who would have thought, like, I never would have thought like trap shooting for a fundraiser. But I mean, it's literally, you can do anything. So
yeah, exactly. It's like you just find what people want. And like I've seen such crazy fundraising events that like I see these creative ones and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? So like I've seen cornhole tournaments before. Yamhill County has this amazing fundraiser. They get 20 restaurants to make a specialty grilled cheese sandwich. And you get a punch card like a McMiniman's passport. And you go around to all 20 of the restaurants and you get like a t-shirt and raffle prizes. And all the proceeds go back to the food bank. And like, I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
That's what's up. That's amazing. And so like, it's the coordination. It's the getting people on your team to actually see it through. That I think that at least for me, that's the difficulty that I've had, is because events are hard. It's a lot of work, and you got to involve a lot of people, but it can be so worth it. So that's awesome. And so had you done anything outside of college that wasn't event planning? Because it sounds like that's all you've done.
That was pretty much it. The only thing was I did have that super short internship where I was recruited by a professor to do and this is why I knew I didn't like it. It was a market research project on why the study abroad programs at Portland State were failing. And so like I went around, I interviewed people like, well, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And when do you think you should be studying abroad, and what year, and why doesn't it work? And it turns out like, well, you want everyone to study abroad junior year, but that's when you have this like year-long required class that's not offered at study abroad. So then they have to come back and it was one of those things where it's like, duh, like if you would have thought about this just a little bit harder, you would have saved me 6 months of like market research.
It's a scheduling conflict.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You just can't do it. That's hilarious. That's super funny. Well, that's awesome. I'm curbing my enthusiasm to pick your brain about event planning, but maybe we'll connect again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have a handful of kind of well, first before that, I have a handful of canned questions that I like to ask everybody just to kind of get a feel for some stuff. But I wanted to ask too. Are you still connected with your chapter or any alumni chapter or anything like that?
I've kind of taken a little break. I was the chapter advisor for University of Portland up until I want to say like 2016 or 17. So it's kind of where I put my main focus, but I still see a ton of Portland State alumni all the time. We're still friends, all connected. The Portland State chapter is interesting because there is like an older group of alumni from the chapter back in the 80s that gets together all the time.
Wow. That's
and yeah, I know. It's crazy. Like, I get emails from them all the time about inviting me to lunch. And I'm like, guys, I can't go to lunch in Gresham on a Thursday. I'm sorry. I'm not retired. But I think a lot of us younger alumni are kind of like trying to figure out when we can get together and what works for us. And I think there hasn't really been a sweet spot that we found yet.
Yeah, it's super tough. And somebody who's been as ambitious as you, I'm sure you'll find that some of that is going to come on your shoulders to organize and
I'm sure
that event. That's just the way it goes. I mean, the people that are involved are the people that are involved. That's just how it is. What about, I was going to ask, well, I guess that does kind of answer the alumni question. And with anything that you've done, have you come across, do you guys have a heavy like networking contingent? Like a lot of the folks that I have talked to have you know, found their work through a brother, or found their next job through a brother, or were recommended. Do you see much of that with your guys, or was it because you guys are so small that you don't have that kind of network established, unless you're, you know, old and retired?
I think that there's definitely been some brothers that have been able to find connections and jobs through other people. But I think because I was looking in such a specialized area in nonprofit events, there's not a whole lot of people in AKSI, at least that I knew at the time, that had those connections. I think that I know of at least one other alumni that works for a nonprofit. So it's one of those things where it's like, when you're in this like super small niche market, it's hard to find people to network with. And then you get into it and you're like, oh my God, now I know everyone because we're a small little contingency.
Yeah, you do. I can't say enough what a benefit that is, though, too, because it's kind of like the first time you go into chapter, right? You've got a bunch of like-minded people in one place. And that's kind of the nonprofit world, right? You have super passionate people who are all connected in one place. If only everybody could learn something from that. I mean, your networks and your groups and your connections and your actual personal relationships with people would be so much better. So, which might be a speech for you to give someday. Now that I'm just giving you work to do. Okay, so some of the questions that I always like to follow up with is who you're taking advice from. And so I like to position it that way because in the professional world, we might have mentors, or maybe you're reading some books that are giving you professional advice, or podcasts, or somebody out there in the world is producing content that you're consuming, or maybe you just have a mentor that you lean on. But these days in your professional life, who are you taking advice from?
I think the first one is, and this is so like vague, but LinkedIn.
Yeah. Like
there are so many great articles that I see on LinkedIn from all these different sources that people are reposting all the time. And I don't know if I just have this like awesome, super rich feed going on. I don't know how this happened, but I swear every time I log into LinkedIn, I'll scroll and like the third post, I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I'll click on an article and I have like some, you know, wonderful gem of an idea, or like whatever I've been struggling with at work, it just seems to like know that I need to read this article. So it was really interesting, especially because, you know, I just transitioned jobs and I looked at LinkedIn, and something that popped up was like why it's okay to grieve your previous job. Because it talks a lot about, you know, not always the negative side of leaving a job. Because, you know, when I left my job, it was definitely to take a step forward in my career. And so of course you still have this kind of piece of you that misses your old job and how comfortable you were and your coworkers. And so like reading that, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what's happening. I'm like grieving my old job. Like I couldn't even put that into words. So I don't know. I just feel like LinkedIn has such cool stuff going on.
That's amazing.
And the other person that I've been taking advice from is my executive director from Home Builders Foundation. He retired about like 6 months before I left. And he's been in the nonprofit industry his whole career, like 45, 50 years in nonprofits. And he's one of those people that I'm like, man, like I just need to vent. I just need to tell you about something. I have this problem that I can't solve. And he's one of those people, like he just listens and he just kind of nods his head. And then at the end, he's like, have you thought about, and then it's just like these words of wisdom. I'm like, Ken, of course, you always come through. So
that's awesome.
Those are the two that I got for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. A lot of people pump LinkedIn, and I've tried, and I just can't, I don't know. I'm missing something. So I'll have to like spend a little more time and poke around. I don't know what it is, but I'm not getting I'm glad you are. A lot of people keep on. And I thought until you brought up the articles and how poignant they were, I thought it was just because this isn't, AK sci. I thought somebody was just like, oh yeah, LinkedIn, because it's business. Like I don't care. Like
whatever.
Yeah. Tell me what's actually going on. Like,
yeah. I mean, the thing about LinkedIn, though, is I feel like it's not the greatest way to network. It really isn't. Like, you add people on LinkedIn, they send you a message, and it's kind of like, I'm terrible about checking my LinkedIn messages. Like, sorry if you've messaged me, I won't respond. But the other things on LinkedIn, like the newsfeed feature, killer.
Yeah, that's
everything
awesome.
else.
That would be an interesting panel, because networking is such a dirty word, and I've heard people refer to it as making industry friends. Just make some industry friends. I'm like, okay, that's cool too. But how do you actually like build relationships? Up here they call it the Seattle freeze, and it doesn't matter if it's a business relationship or people are going out for drinks. Like, you meet somebody, you're like, okay, cool, yeah, that sounds good. I'll never talk to you again. It's a thing up. I don't know if you guys have something similar, but that's what it's called up here. Maybe we should get a panel together.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Okay, so everything that you've done now, from school, I'm sure you've got goals, career-wise, life-wise, living your best life, and all that fun stuff. But from some point in your, whether it was high school or college, everything that you've done up to now, if you could go back in time from now to then, whatever that moment, that critical moment in time was, what are two tangible pieces of advice you could give yourself that would help you get to where you are now faster? Does that make sense? Two tangible, actionable.
I would probably go back to my freshman year of college, and the two pieces of advice I would give myself would be, one, get an internship sooner, because I waited until I think like my junior year to get an internship.
These are unpaid internships, working for free.
Mine were both stipends. I mean, I got like $300 a month. It's not, we're not talking big money.
Barely.
But some sort of internship that's relevant to what I was learning, because that's when I figured out what I really wanted to do and how much further ahead would I be if I had had an event-based internship my freshman year. Like, who knows if I would have, already been whatever title I want in the future, if I had that experience. And then number two is, and like, this is going to sound super preachy to the students listening, but I would actually pay more attention in class and not just learn things to regurgitate on a test or in a paper, but actually like pay attention and think about how this is actually going to apply in my career. Because I feel like there was a lot of classes that I'm like, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to write the paper, I'm going to take the test, and I'm going to have spring break, and I'm going to forget about all of it.
Yeah.
And there are so many times that I'm like Googling things and I'm like, this sounds so familiar. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sure I heard this in a class one time and I've already forgotten about it. So like just paying attention and like realizing that, yeah, it's like you're learning it to pass the class, to get the degree, to get a job, but it actually does have some real world relevance, at least hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. That's super interesting. I like your first advice better. So, because I think that a lot of folks don't realize the power of doing, the power of actually taking action, of actually doing the thing. Like, it's easy to pontificate. It's easy to like talk, up in the clouds, like, oh, this is how it works. Okay. Have you ever done it? Like, did you do the thing? Because it's just frustrating when like, oh, you just do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. Like,
you gotta get in the trenches.
Yeah, in the trenches. I love that. So, outside of work, right? Outside of what you're doing for work, if people were hanging out in Portland and they ran into you, where would they find you? What activities? What kind of extracurricular best life stuff are you doing outside of work?
So you probably wouldn't find me in Portland.
Okay.
So Newberg's like 45 minutes outside of Portland.
Newberg. Okay. All right.
So, I mean, I'm going to be honest, you'll probably find me at a tap house, drinking nice cider, hanging out with my husband, living my best life.
That's it. Cider.
Yeah. But, you know, if it was summer, you'd probably find me on my paddleboard somewhere on the Yamhill River or the Tualatin River or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a place by me that does paddleboard yoga, and and it's in the salt water and the sound. I just think to myself, I would just end up in the water.
Oh yeah.
Like it doesn't. There's no hot enough day that's going to work.
Nope, not in the sound. No.
Too cold.
Too cold.
That's awesome. So one of the things, like, I always try to move away from the fraternity as fast as possible and try to talk about actual life things, because I think that's if anybody who is actually listening and watching, alumni or otherwise or whatever, they're going to get the best, you know, meat and potatoes from, oh, okay, that's how you navigate, or this is why those things are important, or they can learn off of your experience. And obviously everybody has a definition of what winning looks like and what their best life looks like. But what do you think sets apart the people that actually get to live their best life, or they actually win, whether it's like in health, wealth, family, you know, all that stuff, like, versus those that quit or never start, or, you know, they pontificate, but they never take the action. What do you think the difference in those folks are?
I think one of the biggest differences is seeing the big picture. You know, I think a lot of people get caught up in the day-to-day of the mundane. I'm in this job because I need to pay my rent in 5 days, and, you know, I'm just going to stay here because it's easy, and not looking at that big picture of like, well, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What's your next step, and how are you going to get there? I think the people that really succeed and are, like, you know, living their best life, they're the ones that are looking at the big picture and going like, you know, I might be miserable in this job, but I'm going to be here for the next 2 years to, you know, be able to do X, Y, and Z and put that on my resume so that I can go to this level and get this job or move to this company. Or I think just like goal setting, you know, and like realizing the determination that you need to get there.
Yeah, 100%. Are you the type of person that actually writes your goals down?
Not really. Like, I just know, like, I know what I want to do. So I'm like, I know my next steps. I know the career path I'm on. I know where I want to go. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really tough. And I wonder when people ask like, oh, do you know where you want to go? Do you know what you want that to look like? And I don't think enough people spend enough time thinking about what their best life actually looks like. And then breaking that down into the daily activities or the weekly activities or the monthly activities to actually get there and go there and do the thing. Like, you can dream about Lamborghinis and yachts, right?
Yeah.
But what
are you going to do?
Yeah, if that's your thing, cool.
Yeah.
But like, what are you actually going to do to get there? So I love that. So let's see, where is it? Oh, is there, I guess this is kind of the last question. I mean, that really sums it up. But the last question is, you know, well, it's not that complicated. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you thought we would, or any last piece of advice for anybody who's going out there and trying to do it, or anything that you could share with people who are interested in nonprofit work, or cover the spectrum? Anything?
I would say, so some advice that I've given some people is, don't be afraid of nonprofits. I think a lot of people shy away from nonprofits because they think that you're not going to make any money in them. And it's totally not true. Like, yeah, there are some small nonprofits out there, and yeah, there are some nonprofits that don't pay well, but there's a lot of big companies that don't pay well either. And if you get in the right job, like, I think it's much easier to move up the ladder in a nonprofit versus a for-profit, because there's not as many people, there's not as much competition. And I think on an entry-level basis, like, especially for students that are graduating, just try it and see if it's going to work for you, because there's accountants at nonprofits, and there's communications experts at nonprofits. There's CFOs and CEOs, and it's this whole thing that I think colleges kind of ignore. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a real detriment to the students that are graduating, not realizing that they can do what they love to do, but also make a difference.
Yeah. I think nonprofits are strong. I like that advice, because I've said it twice. I'll say it again, but their ability to communicate with each other and build a strong community mm-hmm. is far greater than what most people and what most companies are able to achieve. And it's a world where people, if you're doing the right things and you're shaking hands and you're connecting with people, there's always going to be somebody that needs your help, especially if you're somebody who can get things done.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, I super appreciate you making yourself so available to jump on and make this thing happen. I hope that people get a lot of value from it. Is there a way? I know you say you don't check your LinkedIn messages, but if somebody has a question about the nonprofit work, or they're hanging out at a cidery down in Newberg or whatever, like, what's the best way for folks to reach out and connect with you?
Facebook, honestly, I check those messages way more because it pops up on my phone. I'm one of the only Nicole Wolfers, so that's exciting. If you want to send me an email, my email is Nicole, F as in Frank, Wolfer @gmail.com.
That's awesome. I'm going to jot that down right in it actually as we speak. I'm going to link all that stuff up in the show notes. I think I can probably figure out how to do that. And then if somebody says hello, that'd be awesome. So again, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and hopefully we'll get a chance to touch back with you. Would be rad to follow up and see how Meals on Wheels has progressed, because most people just think, okay, there's people that show up in a truck with some food for old people. That's what that image is, but yeah, I'm sure it's so much more than that. So
yeah, there's a lot of fundraising that pays for those trucks and those meals. So
yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much. I super appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin.